Hello, I'm Quinn Rangel, and wait, don't click off yet. Look, random meme, look. Actually don't know what meme I put there. Whatever meme I picked, trust me, it was probably funny. Cause come on, it's me. Why would I put something that's not funny? Like genuinely, like think about it for a second. Why would I put something that's not funny? Go ahead. Explain it to me. Anyways, I'm Quinn Rangel, and I'm a semi-avid movie enjoyer. I know this movie's been out for like 2 weeks already, but listen, I went to movies today, okay? And I had to see something. It's not Friday yet, so I had to review something that was a little bit old, okay? Come on, not my fault. Don't be so hard on me, okay? Please. But anyway, this review will be over Housemaid, directed by Feig, starring Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfield, and Brandon Skinner. And before I can even give like a true opinion on this movie or not, you just kind of have to know what a rough year it's been for the main star of the movie, Sydney Sweeney. I mean, most of us already know to some capacity of all the antics she's been up to. I mean, I don't know how you even explain some of this. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not how normal people behave.
Is there something that you want to say about the ad itself?
Ad spoke for itself.
You think the ad spoke for itself?
So while you have Sydney Sweeney on one side being like, yo, my jeans are great. And then you have Amanda on the other side of the PR being like, hey, communism is actually the greatest thing on the planet Earth, by the way. And so funnily enough, when it comes to like the background and the marketing of this movie, I saw nothing actually related to this movie. To give you like a quick synopsis of the movie, the three main characters that you have to remember that Sydney Sweeney is Millie, you have to remember that Brandon is Andrew, and you have to remember that Amanda is Nina. But essentially, Nina and Andrew are married, and they are looking for a housemaid. That is where Millie comes in and applies for the job of being the housemaid for the Winchester family. And the reason this is important is because Millie is broke, she's hopeless, and she's also on parole for murder, specifically manslaughter. And so when Millie gets hired, Millie has to essentially determine whether it's worth sticking it out and keeping the job, or she can break parole and get away from the Winchester family, who seems to be like really shady and really crazy. Yeah, Amanda is basically a schizophrenic in this movie. She literally takes medications that it's like literally looked up in the movie like, oh, this is to treat acute psychosis and schizophrenia. Like, okay, sure, subtext is appreciated, but sometimes we don't need subtext, you know? So the first thing you have to mention, no matter what, when it comes to this movie, you have to mention the big apple pie in the center of all this. But Sydney Sweeney is literally the main character. She is the main character of the movie. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but I also don't want to be so hard on it. But yeah, low-key, she's kind of dog shit in this movie. I don't know how else to say that. There's so many times during this movie, especially the beginning, where characters will be talking to her and she just has just a blank. It's just a blank expression of just nothing, and she just carries it. It's just blank, and it doesn't really matter what they say. Hey Sydney, how did you like your room? Hey Sydney, I'm kind of like, I'm really not trying to be a hater. I'm really not, because here's the thing, I actually do like Sydney Sweeney as an actor. I'm sorry, a little hot take. I know. But like, listen, I enjoyed her in two major things. I enjoyed her in Euphoria, and I also enjoyed her in Immaculate. If you haven't seen Immaculate, I really do recommend. If you love horror and you love all things horror, this Immaculate was such a great movie, and I thought Sydney Sweeney was a pretty good part of that, to my memory at least. So to see her here and to see her so lifeless and so bland and so pale and so boring, it just doesn't make sense to me. It feels like I don't even want to blame her. I don't know if that was a thing of the director. Listen, I like the director. Listen, I haven't seen all of his films, but I have seen A Simple Favor, and kind of looking at his filmography kind of at a distance, I mean, listen, this man makes movies for the chicks. I'm gonna be honest. He kind of just does. So yeah, I just didn't know if he just didn't know how to properly direct Sydney, or whether she really was supposed to just kind of have like a blank, expressionless, like kind of generic, like I'm shocked. I'm shocked you said that. There's a pretty big part in the movie where actually Amanda is getting kicked out of the house because Brandon has taken such a liking to Sydney Sweeney, and literally Sydney just kind of whispers like, you need help packing your bags. That was actually more emotion than how she actually said it, by the way. But then Amanda is like, what'd you say? What'd you say? And then Sydney is like, you need help packing your bags? It's like you couldn't give it any more emotion on the first time or even the second time. What's crazy is she immediately gets slapped afterwards, and Amanda is like pulling and tugging at her face, and it's still bland paper. It's still nothing. It's still nothing. And so once again, I just don't know if that was a direction sort of thing, or if Sydney Sweeney just really wanted to phone it in. And like, here's the thing, she's not terrible for the entire part of the movie. Kind of there, the 3/4, the kind of ending, she actually does show some good emotion, like that kind of like resting, bitchy, kind of pale, bland face that she has going on for the entire movie. It kind of does work in her favor at some point, and it's when she's smashing like the fine china and she's like behind the door and whatnot. That is where I feel like it works the best for her. But outside of that, if you really pay attention to how she's acting and what she is during the movie, she is by far the weakest thing about the movie, and it's not even close. Now, on the other hand, Amanda and Brandon, the other two main characters of the movie, they did absolutely phenomenal. So the movie is basically split into two halves. The second half is very, very heavy into the psychological thriller, and the first half is just kind of like the setup into that second half. So the first half does have good parts in it, and you know what? It's mostly carried by Amanda, and she's able to portray kind of like a psycho bitch so well. And on the second half of the film, where it switches to where Amanda is actually the one that is, actually not the psycho one anymore. Brandon is actually the psycho one. He's been the psycho one all along. And then you see Brandon be the bitch in the movie. Yeah, it's great. And how they portray their characters is so much better than what Sydney Sweeney was able to do with her character. But yeah, with Brandon actually being the main kind of sick, twisted guy in the second half of the movie, he's good at being such a douche. It really does amplify it when he tries to get an ounce of sympathy from Amanda, like towards the end of the movie. Like, Amanda is looking over like a spiral staircase, which, by the way, spiral, wow, it almost like if Brandon dies there, it's like his life spiraled out of control somehow. Wow, I wonder if there's symbolism there. Yeah, she's like looking over the spiral staircase, and Brandon just kind of comes in. It's like he's like missing a tooth, the blood's all over him. He's like, hey, I kind of messed up. And it's a funny, kind of endearing thing to see from him, especially for how much of a sadistic bitch he's been the entire movie. Once again, we eat that up. We eat that up, fellas. We eat that up, chat. Another scene in the movie that's absolutely great is only great because of the line of dialogue that's said. And so to give you some pretext, after Sydney and Brandon spend like a whole night on the town together and they actually sleep together, gross. After they do the little deed, they kind of go back to the house and they have to pretend to Amanda like, oh, nothing ever happened. And so because Sydney is the housemaid, whatever, Brandon's like, hey, let's go have some lunch. Like, can you make us some lunch, Sydney? And so Sydney's like, yeah, like, I can make you lunch. And so Brandon and Amanda are like sitting at the table, and Sydney comes and like serves them food, whatever. And Amanda is just like, oh, where'd you learn to cook like this? Prison? When I tell you, my whole audience gasps. Listen, I saw this movie twice in two different theaters. The first one was actually really, really crowded because I saw it on release, and the second one was not that crowded, and yet it was still, people were still being gagged, I'm not gonna lie. My only problem was there was this like one guy like sitting behind me or something, and sometimes he just like made noises, and it like I understand it's Sydney Sweeney. And there was like two shower scenes. I think she's nude maybe 3 or 4 times during the movie. And sometimes he'd just be like, bro, who is that? Who's behind me? But overall, another thing that just kind of caught me off guard when it came to the movie, I was really surprised at the amount of blood in this movie. People do some really crazy shit here. Sydney Sweeney will get like a plate of broken glass and she has to make like 10 deep cuts on her stomach. That was brutal to watch. Having to watch Brandon at one point pull a tooth out of his mouth using pliers. Listen, I understand it's a movie. It still didn't get any better on the second watch. It really, really didn't. And one of my favorite films is Saw X. I think somebody has to like pick at their own brain or something like that. It's been a while since I've seen it, but like it's kind of weird. But yeah, I say besides the fact of Sydney Sweeney kind of phoning in a lot of her acting during the movie, another thing I have a problem with is just that the writing is kind of corny and the writing doesn't make any sense. It really, really doesn't. One of the biggest plot holes here, and I don't really know if this counts as like a plot hole or not, but essentially you kind of have to believe that Amanda is stuck in her situation of being like abused by Brandon, but it just doesn't make any sense. Like, for example, at the end of the movie, when Sydney Sweeney's character is up in the attic and trapped by Brandon's means, like, she has to make 10 deep cuts in her stomach. Those 10 deep cuts are not gonna heal, and that is like pretty solid evidence that you've been in some part attacked, something like that, and you're gonna tell me Amanda has no sign of that? Like, we're supposed to believe that Brandon at every single point, at every single step, has just like outsmarted her and can just be like, oh, those marks, those are actually, yeah, she did those to herself. Yeah, she's actually like really, really loco, guys. Like, you just have to believe me. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And even then, in the psych ward that she was admitted to, whatever, they're not gonna like be like, hey, so like what happened here? What I really hate when movies don't allow for the truth to be said, especially if it's like, if you directly said what was happening, this situation would be so much different. But no, apparently that doesn't work. And also at the end, where they have to cover up Brandon's like death in the movie, whatever, Amanda's character is just like, oh, let's just say he fell when fixing a light bulb. And so the police officer is like interrogating her, and the police officer is like, there was this other girl that, Brandon knew, and at one time 8 years ago, she was at my doorstep. It was my sister, by the way, and like she was never the same afterwards. So yeah, let's just rule this as, he just took a really, big fall right there. Am I supposed to believe that only one person on the entire police department investigates a little red room like that? Like, it just, only one person, only one person. And they're not going to question the wound in his neck, which this police officer does mention. And I'm pretty sure at some point, like, other detectives can go in like previous files and like dig something up, especially if it's marked as like unsolved, I guess. Well, I mean, I guess in this context it is solved, like it's a fall, but like nobody's gonna be like, hey, that was kind of shady. No one's gonna do that apparently in 20 years, whatever. And a big thing at the end too, once again, Sydney Sweeney, she still has the marks all over her stomach. They're all covered in blood. No one's gonna be like, oh, are you hurt? Do you have any wounds? If you have any wounds, let's go ahead and check that out. At the very least, that's a pretty solid like self-defense claim here. You can make something up about how you escaped the addict and how he attacked you for escaping the addict. I don't know. It just doesn't, you just kind of have to suspend your belief, I guess. But I digress. At the end of the day, the movie, if you can like turn your brain off and you can kind of just enjoy it for what it is, this is like a Lifetime movie on steroids, baby. Like, it is so juicy, and it is so good in so many parts. And if you allow for a lot of room to where you can let the writing kind of just like take you places, I guess you could say, like if you can just ignore some of the little things that don't make any sense, It's actually a very, very good movie. The best way I can describe this movie, other than the Lifetime comparison, is like junk food. It's really sweet and it's really, really tasty. And you just, at some points, you just can't resist, but you just have to have it. Honestly, 4.5 stars out of 5. I really, really enjoyed it.